5 minutes on life in the Soviet Union. I think the theme of what Barbara said about the isolation is the key word, I would say, of what we experienced there. It was a world such as I think does not exist anymore. Perhaps North Korea, I don't know, I haven't been there. But it was really, this total isolation was the biggest burden, I think, for someone from the West living in Moscow. Otherwise, the fact is we led fairly privileged lives as diplomats. I mean, we had food even imported from Stockholm, from Stockmann's. We could shop in special stores that were set up for foreigners and so on. We compared to the average Soviet, we can't say, I think, that we suffered really. But it was the element of isolation and the element of sort of control that was extraordinary. For example, we were there when Ronald Reagan was shot, and the television announced that Ronald Reagan had been shot. But then they did not know how to handle this, what else they could say in the TV studio. For the next 8 hours, there was not a word on whether he was alive, whether he was dead, whether the assailant was apprehended. They just did not know how to handle the story. And thus, we really did not know what happened. We did not know if he was alive or dead for 8 hours, because they just would not carry this. The TV announcers did not know what line to take in presenting this to the people. And this element of control and isolation was really, sometimes people ask me about the inevitable question of the KGB. What were the KGB tactics? Were you harassed and so on? The amazing thing about the KGB was how sophisticated they were, to my mind. It was psychologically a very sophisticated strategy that they had toward diplomats. For example, they wanted to foster the isolation of their own people from foreign diplomats. They did not want diplomats talking to the average Russian whom they might meet when they were traveling or something like that. They wanted to keep that barrier. So what did they do? Well, in my time, for example, there was an incident of two Japanese diplomats from the Japanese embassy who were traveling, and they were in a city in a hotel, and there was a Soviet wedding party going on, and the father of the bride came over and insisted that they have a drink in honor of his daughter. Of course, they could not resist. They had a drink. They became violently ill that evening. They had to return to Moscow. It was clear that the drink that they had been given something intentionally to become ill. What happened was, word of this spread through the diplomatic community instantly. And the next time somebody was traveling and a Soviet person offered you a drink, you turned it down. And you probably reinforced the KGB notion that, boy, those foreigners are very unfriendly, and they're not very nice people. They won't even accept the drink from you. But people did that because they did not want to have the same thing happen to them. It was a very sophisticated way of trying to keep you from getting to know or to establishing contact with the average Soviet. Just one other instance, and what the Soviets did also to try to increase your own vulnerability as diplomats. Of course, we had a lot of protection as diplomats from the KGB and so on. But we all lived in apartment houses that were basically Soviet-run, and the Soviets could come in and out. And what was routine, at least in the American embassy, is you would come home one evening, and a lamp, which had always been on that table on that side of the room, was on that table on that side of the room. And it was purposely, it was very intentional to remind you of your vulnerability, and that somebody had been there, and that they could have done something much worse if they wanted to. And yet it was at such a level that you could not complain about it. You would not go to the foreign ministry and say, somebody moved a lamp in my apartment from one table to another. It would be absurd to do that. And they knew how to push this exactly to the level where you would get the message that they are there, that they can do things to you, and yet to do it at a level where it was almost impossible to complain about it or to do anything about it. And this was commonplace. It happened to all of the people in the embassy. And some of them, the people who were harassed, who were really sort of intentionally harassed, were generally the people who worked with the dissidents or who had certain jobs like that in having contacts with the dissidents and so on. And to them, they could do much worse things. There was a whole gradation of things that could be done. Some people had their freezers unplugged when they were on vacation, and which was serious. You could lose hundreds of dollars worth of food or damage done to some of your things. But what I found interesting was just the moving the lamp from one table to another. And some people were really psychologically affected by this. I mean, by the sense that you did not know, you did not have control over your own living space. Some people it didn't bother. But anyway, it was definitely a tactic that was employed.